Good morning, good evening. How everyone? Hope you guys are joining well as you're joining us for this session today. Just use the chat box to let us know if you can hear me, you can connect with us so that we get started on this conversation. Let me know if you can hear me from the chat. Great. Fantastic. I'm glad to know that you guys can hear me. So as we're getting started, I think one of the key things that I just want to let us know is that this is part of our industry discussion forum, but it's also part of the opportunities that we have to facilitate engagement with stakeholders and different professionals within the industry. And guided by that, then one of the key things that we get to know each other now in this digital age is to share our LinkedIn profile. So one of the key things that I'll request for you is on the chat, just introduce yourself and let us know where are you joining us from and how is it from wherever it is that you are in. And I've also shared the link for those who have your mobile devices. You can scan this particular document that I'm sharing here, the QR code, so that we can get to know where you're joining us from, but also get to know what your expectation, what your understanding of pool procurement in our is at a personal level. So I've already shared the link on the chat, and I've also shared the QR code. If you can see it, unlocking the power pool procurement in Africa lessons, gaps, and future direction. As you go to the chat, I'm also just bringing my screen up so that we can have it active. I've received 0 responses yet. So let's get your contributions. Let's get your feedback. Let us know where you're joining us from. If you're on the chat, you will see this kind of a screen. The same way that I've brought it back again, the QR code is here and the link has already been shared in the chat. So you can either scan this code or just click on the link in the chat and give us your feedback. The good thing is it's anonymous, so you won't have to identify in any way, but also didn't need to sign in into the call. Till 0 responses, guys. It's a very swift survey, just 5 questions, actually 5 years. So where are you logging in from? Just let us know where you're logging in from. What is pool procurement for you? And the reason as to why this is important for us is to understand, okay, we're talking about pool procurement, the potential that it has for Africa. What are the lessons as far as it's been going along, the gaps, and also most importantly, what is the future direction? So we're keen on knowing, do you know what pool procurement is or what does that look like? What are the benefits in your understanding? What are the challenges with pool procurement as you look at it and as you understand it? And would you argue for pool procurement if we were to look at pool procurement as a next phase of frontier in terms of ensuring health product security in Africa? Would you be behind it? Would you support it? And if so, what are some of the reasons? I'd be glad to just get your feedback, get your comments, so that we get into the conversation with a kind of a sense of what we're dealing with, number one. But most importantly, beyond who we are dealing with is getting to know what is your take, what is the sentiment in the room around pool procurement as a principle, but also as a way of ensuring there's reliability and access to safe, effective, and quality products in the continent. Mhm. We have response already. One, an effort made by a group of buyers to acquire purchases. We have from Eswatini, from Tharaka. I'll be projecting them. So to acquire purchases, consolidated purchasing by different buyers for collective bargaining from vendors. Okay, more people. Let's continue, guys. Mhm. Multiple buyers coming together to purchase goods and services. Faster access to medicines in an affordable manner. Low benefits, lower costs. Good. Let's continue. Let's continue filling it out. 5 responses so far. And the people who have responded, we have a majority from Kenya and somebody from Eswatini. Somebody from South Africa. Fantastic. Let's continue building up on this. What is pool procurement? Effort made by group of buyers to acquire purchases, consolidated purchasing by different buyers for collective bargaining from vendors, multiple buyers coming together to purchase goods and services, procurement mechanism that allows multiple players to source for resource together with a unified negotiating power. Mhm. Collaborative purchasing strategy with multiple buyers through combination of their resources to negotiate for better prices, improve supply reliability, and better bargaining power. Somebody said pool procurement is a collaborative approach where several buyers, like countries, hospital organizations, join forces to purchase medicines, vaccines, or other health products together rather than each buying on their own. Good. Let's continue building on that, guys. I'll leave that question to go to the next question and just see, but doesn't mean that you stop contributing. Keep building on that. So the benefits, we looked at lower cost and easy to acquire, better prices and purchase terms and conditions, lower costs, improved quality, improved efficiency, faster access to medicines in an affordable manner, better price, better negotiation, lower prices, improved supply security. We have low prices for consumers, predictable demand for manufacturers, and security in increasing the volume of purchases, one process of adjudication and segregation of orders direct to the purchaser from the vendor. So those are some of the benefits that we're seeing there. In terms of the challenges, we have inequality among buyers, regulatory challenges in different countries, a lack of coordination by some parties affecting the whole purchase process. We have customs restrictions, payment and cash flow issues, supply chain disruptions. Okay. Different markets or countries tend to have different disease burdens. This can be a challenge when buying different products. Then we have loss of autonomy. It requires strong coordination mechanisms, requires trust and coordination among members. It's vertical programming and funder objectives, risk management during selection process of vendors. Great. Those are good insights. That. Would you recommend pool procurement? We have 6 years. We have one maybe, one no. So let's continue contributing to the poll, guys. The link is still in the chat. Link is still in the chat, and the QR code is also still in the chat. And as we get into the next part, I will keep the link open so you can contribute to it as we continue with the conversation and in the discussions. But one thing that I want to encourage all of us to do is to ensure that we keep engaging, we keep having conversation, but also introduce yourself in the chat. In the chat box, the only thing that I would request of you is tell us which country you are operating from and introduce us and tell us who you are, what you do, and probably your LinkedIn profile so that then we can get to connect. We can know the work you do, but we can also get to connect with you to carry the conversation beyond this particular forum that we are hosting today. So as we get started, I want to get to the piece of just setting out some of the ground rules of how we are going to engage. One, we encourage you to introduce yourself, and I've already said this in the group chat where we're engaging so that you can share your LinkedIn account link. Tell us your name, what do you do, which organization are you working with? Most importantly, share the link so that we can engage. You might have noticed, and I believe most of you have noticed that your microphones or cameras are blocked. They're not accessible in the interim for this particular session when we're having the presentations. Towards the end, we will unmute you and will allow you to be able to ask your questions, to contribute to the conversation. And we're hoping that this is going to be of value in terms of facilitating conversations. In the interim at the moment, it is to avoid distractions. And therefore, that is why you'll see your microphones and your cameras are all off. We will have a Q&A session. And when you go to your screen at the topmost, you will find a Q&A tab. Please, when something is coming up in your mind, you have a question that is troubling you, you have a kind of a pain point, please shoot it in the Q&A session. Then we will be reading through them in our Q&A section towards the end of the session. If you have any other challenges, please comment in the chat, keep the conversation going, and let's make the best of this session as we move through. So with that said, I'll want to take the first opportunity just to take you guys through what African Pharmaceutical Network is, what do we do, and most importantly, to let you know what kind of opportunities and benefits can you get by engaging with us and by being part of the network for the journey that we are on. So African Pharmaceutical Network is a Pan-African network that convenes pharmaceutical stakeholders for knowledge sharing, policy shaping, and innovation nurturing partnerships with an ultimate aim of ensuring there's reliable access to safe, effective, and quality medicines and health products and technologies in Africa. This is part of our knowledge sharing perspective where we have guest speakers and experts in the industry coming in to join us to tell us what work they're dealing with, but also what are the opportunities that they see in those markets so that at the end of the day, we bring a common understanding and knowledge of what's happening in our landscape. But most importantly, ensure that these interventions are getting to succeed. And when they're not succeeding, we're proposing alternative improvement mechanisms. And that makes it critical that as we are going to look at what is happening around pool procurement in the continent of Africa through the African pool procurement mechanism, you can shape your insights and share your contributions so that the experts we engage with can improve on this to make them be practical, sustainable, but also impactful in terms of being pragmatic on what the dynamics of the market we're operating in is. Why did we come up with the network? We all understand that more than 70% of pharmaceutical supplies in the continent are imported. Therefore, then we have limited local manufacturing capability, but at the same time, we understand that that is contributed to by some other, I would say, ancillary factors and challenges that we have in the continent. One of them would be, for example, human workforce. Do we have the right talent to be able to deliver on those priorities? Do we have financing to support local manufacturing? Do we have the right technologies, and what kind of deals do we need to have in place to facilitate technology transfer? So these are some of the key considerations that we look at. And then we have that kind of a problem where the local capability to manufacture and to supply our local needs in the continent are minimal. and we're hoping we can move towards addressing that gap. We have a segregated and disjointed pharmaceutical system. And that is where you'll see the people who are working in hospitals will be staying in their clinical practice. The industry guys are coordinating in the industry. The only point that interface comes in is when we are marketing products to the end consumer, the patients or the doctors who are prescribing or dispensing or administering the product. But in between, there's limited conversation. On the other end, engagement with regulators is only at the point of either product registration or at a point of a market issue, a market event where the regulator is now reining in and enforcing compliance with the regulatory requirements. What if we change that dynamic to be more collaborative rather than be more adversarial and more of enforcement on compliance rather than collaboration to shape best practices? And at the point when we were coming up with African Pharmaceutical Network, we noted that there's a lack of a single common platform that could bring together stakeholders. And our aspiration and our aim is to ensure that we have that house that everybody can feel free to join, but also engage in shape conversation that will drive your priorities from industry, drive priorities from professional practice, but also drive policy priorities from government needs and government aspirations. And that is the essence of what we're looking at. And if we're able to drive that, we will guarantee there's reliable access to safe, effective, and quality health products and technologies in the continent. So what do we do? And that is anchored on our mission. We support workforce development, and when you'll know about the Pharmacy Academy, we do a lot of training programs, and we're building on more so that we can bridge the skills gap in the continent, whether for professionals aspiring to work in the pharma industry or for professionals working in industry and want to upskill, but most importantly, also to build capabilities in industry that are operating in the continent and even for different players who are venturing into the African market. Those are some of the key things that we're looking at in terms of training, business ecosystem support services, including regulatory support, but also working with governments, policymakers, and regulators to shape policy in the market to ensure that we are moving towards that vision that we have for the continent, but we are doing it collaboratively in a joint effort and with synergies in our capabilities. In doing this work, we are guided by a couple of values. Our values, number one, and which lies at the core, is humanity. We all are human, and therefore the humanity that we have in ourselves, and that is what we need to exemplify in all our service. Working with integrity, being professional in our conduct in execution of our responsibilities, creating value to our clients, to the stakeholders that we engage with in every single day, and most importantly, working as a team, and that cements the focus on having a network that brings all the stakeholders together, and we leverage on our strengths, use that to deliver value and also drive growth in the continent for whatever it is. Where did we start our journey? 2020, we came up with the idea on having this platform in place, and that has been an ongoing journey in terms of establishing it, having the foundational principle, having official registration, and the journey has moved forward. At the moment, as we're talking in 2025, we've firmed up a couple of partnerships. We've also designed the first key offering, which is the Pharmacy Academy, building a resource pool where we can train the right talent that is needed to grow Africa's pharmaceutical industry. In addition to that, we do engage with other stakeholders, and we've had this series of industry discussion forums that are unlocking value by people getting to know what's happening, but not only knowing what's happening, but also shaping where the action is, what needs to happen next, and how we can move it to the next frontier. And I think this is a journey that we are calling on all of you who are here with us in the call. Join us. Let's make African pharma industry and the life science industry thrive to serve the people, to thrive to drive economic growth and development so that we have a robust ecosystem. The services that we offer as an organization in terms of the cooperation is the workforce development. I've already talked about the Pharmacy Academy. Regulatory support services, mostly from local technical representative, pharmacovigilance, quality assurance, audit support, and all that is in scope. Business ecosystem support services, which would be mostly in terms of market research, intelligence, talent management, talent sourcing, and all that. And the last piece is where we engage in policy shaping interventions and partnership with our stakeholders in the market where we operate. So that is an overview of what we do. To join us as a member, we have individual membership, but we also have institutional membership. In individual membership, we acknowledge we have students who might not be able to pay the full membership fee of $50, and therefore then Student fee is $25 per year. Then professionals, full-fledged professionals who are working in the industry or working with an interest in African pharmaceutical industry, you pay $50 to be a member. The benefits that come to you, you do our trainings, our courses if you are interested in any of the available offerings, discounted rates. You have access to a professional network, and therefore you have people that you can brainstorm, you can spawn ideas with. You also have access to some of the opportunities that come to us where we're offering the business ecosystem support services. You can collaborate and work with us on projects. And you have a platform to shape priorities in the industry, thought leadership, where you can talk in such kind of forums, and we're willing to host you. Institutional membership, we have African institutional membership and international institutional membership with different rates. $1,000 for African institutional members and 2,500 for international institutional members in this context. The benefits, you have access to market intelligence, business linkage and partnerships for business interests, business ecosystem support services, mostly at discounted rates for members. And then we have thought leadership opportunities and different engagement, depending on what key priorities do you have. So these are some of the partners that we've worked with, and we're keen building more partnerships. So if you're in the call and you're keen on engaging and being part of the network, please feel free to reach out and let's have a conversation on how we can walk this journey with you. With that said, I'll be handing it over to our guest speaker for the day, who will be taking us into the next part of our conversations. Dr. Wesley. Dr. Wesley Rono is going to be our facilitator for the day. Hope you can hear me, Doc.
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. So I'll just introduce Dr. Wesley Rono, then he will talk over the presentation from here on. So Dr. Wesley Rono is a seasoned pharmaceutical sector development expert with more than 25 years of experience in advancing access to medicines and vaccines across Africa. He currently serves as the lead for market design and demand intelligence program under the Africa CDC's Platform for Harmonized Africa Health Products Manufacturing, where he's supporting the establishment of the African Pooled Procurement Mechanism, among other market-shaping instruments. Wesley has provided high-level technical advisory support to organizations including the GIZ, the European Union, the Africa Development Bank, COMESA, and the UK Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, FCDO. He has been instrumental in shaping policies and incentive frameworks that enable sustainable pharmaceutical manufacturing, pooled procurement, trade facilitation, and regulatory harmonization across the regional blocks such as the East Africa Community and the South African Development Corporation. He is also actively engaged in investment planning for vaccine, cardiovascular, and maternal and child health product manufacturing facilities in Africa, working both with government, development finance institutions, and the private sector to mobilize resources and establish resilient regional supply chains. He's a registered pharmacist with a postgraduate degree in medicinal chemistry and business administration. With that said, I'll hand it over to you, Doc, for the presentation. I don't know if you'd want to share your slides or I project it for you.
Please project it.
Okay, let me just bring it up right away.
So apologies for joining late. I was held up in another meeting.
It's okay, no worries at all, Doc. Let me know when you can see it.
Yes, I can see it. Okay, so you can move to the next slide. So yes, so thank you, APN, for inviting me to this session. And I would like to share, I think, as a way of sharing, based on the topic, I'd like to share some of the work that we are doing at Africa CDC on pooled procurement mechanisms. So I think this would then give us an idea of what's going on and where the opportunities lie, and also potential challenges, because we have gone through this experience of setting it up. So then we're able to share some of the lessons that we have learned and the opportunities that it presents to the continent. So I think in terms of context, the health product market in the continent is fragmented. So you're looking at 55 member states, a population of 1.3, 1.4 billion. But unfortunately, we have 55 member states, and products have to move across borders, across varying regulatory systems. So although the 1.4 billion and the presents a market opportunity, it also presents a huge challenge. So pooled procurement mechanisms offers scale, predictability, and bargaining power. So if we use it well, then as a continent, we'll be able to surmount some of the access challenges that we face. And at the same time, this demand consolidation also will signal potential for investing manufacturing in the continent. The continent at the moment relies around 70%, more than 70% of the needs of the continent is imported. So obviously this situation is not tenable. And also we all learned during the COVID-19 that relying on long supply chains from other regions presents a health security risk. So even with the work that we are doing at the moment, and also with other pooled procurement mechanisms, there is evidence of price reduction and improved availability. So evidence of up to 30 to 40% of price reduction if we were able to leverage on pooled procurement mechanisms. Next slide. So based on this context and other landscape work that has been done and the needs of the continent, a decision was made last year at the area assembly to set up the African pooled procurement mechanism. So unlike other pooled procurement mechanisms, the pooled procurement mechanism of the continent, the continental one, seeks to promote localization of manufacturing in the continent by consolidating demand, making the demand to be predictable, and also using that to put in place other instruments that will then be used to signal to manufacturers who are existing and those who are thinking of investing in the continent. So of course, the second other aim for the pooled procurement mechanism is to improve access to quality and affordable health products. So generally, this is one of the reasons why pooled procurement mechanisms are being set up across the continent. But what is unique about the one at the continental level is the focus on localizing manufacturing. So just to highlight, some of the key issues is that this mechanism should be able to support the continent in responding to health emergencies, build markets around certain portfolios that at the moment in the continent, they don't seem to be feasible to manufacture. But with a consolidated market, then there is opportunity to do that. And then, of course, APPM is coming in an existing market. It seeks to, of course, improve access, promote localization, but also not disrupt certain markets. For example, you look at vaccine markets. The markets, those are markets that need to be healthy in terms of predictable prices, predictable supply over the long term, due to the nature of the complexity of vaccine investments and supplies. Next slide. So when we were developing the pooled procurement mechanism, we looked at other existing mechanisms, be it in the continent, be it outside the continent, and drew lessons from these mechanisms. So I've just highlighted some of them here. Some are, which you know very well, UNICEF, Global Fund, Gavi, UNICEF arrangements. Then outside of the continent, you have good examples like PAHO, GCC. So there are some that are really, lessons. We have learned some lessons across the continent. We also have regional initiatives like the ones at EAC and SADC. So we try to draw lessons from these, and then which inform the establishment of the APPM. Next slide. So there are some key lessons around pool procurement, why it's either successful or not successful. So three key lessons. One is, of course, there has to be sufficient demand to be able to leverage the pool procurement, to be able for you to then be able to negotiate for better prices so that you are able to offer a value proposition. And we also saw some examples where countries actually sign in so that they decide to use the pool procurement mechanism so that there is consistent demand. Examples are PAHO, where countries sign in, the Latin American countries and in the Americas sign to procure vaccines through PAHO. Then there are others where, like GCC, where 60% of national vaccines are procured through their pool procurement mechanism. One of the other key challenges of pool procurement mechanisms is financial viability. So you know the complexities that you want to supply countries. The national budgets are not aligned to the procurement cycles, and the procurement cycles of the country are also not aligned to the procurement cycles of the mechanism that is being set up. So this then creates complexity in terms of financing, paying suppliers when countries will pay. So there has to be systems or instruments that then is able to address these challenges. So some of them which could include capital fund. In PAHO, they have the revolving fund. UNICEF have also a form of a fund that countries can use, can draw on as they take their vaccines and then pay back within a certain period. One of the third challenge, of course, and which is also very critical, is harmonization of regulatory harmonization, harmonization of standards. So products will obviously not move across borders if this is not harmonized. So this is one of the key challenges, especially in the continent, as we have varied regulatory systems across the continent. There is, of course, ongoing efforts to harmonize. So this is one of the key challenges of that pool procurement mechanisms face in terms of moving the products and market approvals across the continent. Next slide. So I'll not take a lot of time on this, but pool procurement mechanisms can be, takes a form of several shapes depending on how it is structured and what is most practical when member states come together. So it could be just a marketplace, information marketplace, where buyers and sellers look at the information and then buy. It could also be informed buying. Then of course it moves from being again moves towards complexity. So to group contracting, where countries are negotiating for consolidating demand, and then using the consolidated demand to negotiate for prices, and then the countries will then pay and get from the suppliers directly. And then the last one is central contracting, where you have one appointed agency to support the country. So there's consolidation, the agency itself then places the orders, make payments, and make deliveries to member states. So it moves from top to bottom. The complexity increases in terms of transactions and the capacity to deliver. Next slide. So at continental level, this is just to show what's going on in the continent and the pool procurement mechanism that APPM recognizes that there are also other regional mechanisms. So be it at East African level, ECOWAS, SADC, or there are a number of initiatives going on across the continent revolving around REX, but there's opportunities to align so that each of these mechanisms is able to play their role, and then they're able to synergize. So there's opportunities for synergizing and collaborations. And each of these regional PPMs also has unique opportunities to address. So in effect, there is always the fear that it fragments the market or competition, but there is also the to look at the other side where opportunities exist in terms of synergies and collaboration. Next slide. So in designing the PPM then, so we looked at these existing mechanisms, and then based on that, decisions were made on which products to focus on, with the understanding that there are national systems that are functioning and efficient. There are also regional mechanisms that are just starting off, and then you have the PPM at the apex. So so here at the APPM, the focus would be on products that makes sense to procure at continental level. So you are looking at medical countermeasures, to address emergencies across the continent. There's also the opportunity to look at vaccines and other ancillary products, and then products around neglected tropical diseases where the volumes by its very nature is low, but consolidating at continental level, then it presents an opportunity. And then, of course, there are also other products that we would like to consolidate at continental level and then use it to signal for manufacturing in the continent. So you're looking at products around TB, malaria, and HIV, where traditionally we're importing, but the disease burden is in the continent. So using the pooled procurement mechanism to signal that. So this pyramid then provides or tries to show how these products are spread across these PPMs. But there is also the opportunity for a PPM to collaborate with REX, and that is at the middle of the pyramid. So there are opportunities around that as they may have shared portfolios. Next slide. So the PPM, we are currently at the starting phase of the APPM. When the APPM was being designed, so 3 stages were very clear. So one is the startup phase, where we are at the moment. And then it will move to the growth phase and maturation phase. In the startup phase, we are starting with a few products, which I'll show, and then a few countries, and then we build over time as we also build capacity to deliver. Next slide. So in the mature phase, we'll have a full set of products which are listed here. I'll not spend time, but it looks at portfolios across vaccines, across NTDs, essential medicines, and it also looks at therapeutics and diagnostics. But that's the mature phase. So the next slide. So the next slide just shows which products we are focusing on at the moment. So we are looking at portfolios that has access challenges like sickle cell, leishmaniasis, and others as an access challenge. So using that to consolidate demand and improve on access. Then there is the ones in the middle, which are SRM and CH products, which 10 countries have come together to procure 10 products of these SRM and CH. So that's what we are working on at the moment. And then you have what Africa CDC has traditionally been doing, medical countermeasures. And then on where we want also, it's a mix of access and manufacturing. So you look at NCDs. We are particularly interested on improving access to insulin, especially by incentivizing production in the continent. We're also looking at oncology and others, and then high burden diseases, as I've mentioned before. Next slide. So for the pilot countries for the SRM and CH products, I'm just highlighting the list here. So these are the ones that we are currently most advanced, where we have done market analysis in the 10 countries for the 10 products. And we are progressing towards working with these countries to do the first pooled procurement, potentially early next year. Next slide. So as I conclude, I mean, the APPM, just like other pooled procurement mechanisms, has the opportunity to shape the market. So for the APPM, we are looking at it in several ways. So In terms of route to market, especially for manufacturers, some of them face challenges around market approval. So, but if the products are prioritized within the APPM, we are working with AMRH and to develop expedited pathways for products that are prioritized. The APPM will also not only look at WHO PQ, but we'll also want to leverage on what the continent has done, which is a products that have been approved by maturity level 3 NRS. So this would be some of the things that we would be able to look at and equivalent standards. And then route to market, manufacturers also face challenges around access to finance, regulatory compliance, trade facilitation. So we'll be able to use some of the tools that we have to support manufacturers who are focusing on the priority products. And then around the demand certainty, we are looking at continental preferential pricing. This is ongoing discussions. We'll also have restricted tenders for those who are manufacturing within the continent. These are framework contracts, innovative financing instruments around volume guarantees. And we'll also encourage manufacturers to do consortium approach, where if they don't have capacity to supply, then they can come together as 2 or 3 manufacturers spread across the continent to fulfill an order that would be placed. Next slide. So as I conclude, I mean, there are risks, of course, for pool, and this does not only apply to APPM, but also other pool procurement mechanisms. So countries can agree to join pool procurement mechanisms, but then they might not channel their demands to these pool procurement mechanisms. There's also although the pool procurement mechanism is focusing on locally manufactured products, the countries may not prioritize this. We have had good political will and decisions so far, so we hope this will continue. And then, of course, we as APPM we need to demonstrate. We need to demonstrate success. We need to be efficient in service delivery. We have to have a value proposition to the member states so that they'll then be able to continue to use the APPM. I think this should be my last slide. Okay, I think there is one last one. So key takeaways then is that pool procurement, if used properly, can transform the landscape. However, it requires collaboration with DFIs, donors, private sector, member states, and coming together to build these markets can then only strengthen our effort to be self-reliant in the continent, or at least reverse the unhealthy dependence on imports. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Ari, for that presentation as well. And also for bringing us into the work that you've been leading and you've been supporting with the African Union. I know you need to step out. I'll be keen just to get a couple of questions if we have some from the team. So anybody with questions on the Q&A or even on the chat box, please bring them up. Or if you want to raise your hand, please raise your hand so that you can ask it before Dr. Wesley steps out. Anybody with a question? Maybe my question to you, Dr. Ronald, as we wait for any other person who might be having a question, is when you look at these pool procurement mechanism from what you're coordinating, how willing are the local manufacturers in the continent open to adopt it and actually sign up to participate?
I think, thank you for your questions. I think the local manufacturers are looking for one thing, potentially 2 things which are related. So one, of course, is that they get into this mechanism and they're able to supply and be paid on time. I think some of the challenges that they've had in national systems and others is, of course, supplying and then not being waiting for payment. So what we are trying to set up at the continental level is the revolving fund, more or less like in Power, where manufacturers are paid on time, and then the member states will then pay. So we are structuring that, and then we are also looking at structuring volume guarantees around specific products. So volume guarantees from the supply side means that the the manufacturer will be guaranteed payment and offtake once they get into those arrangements. So for a period of time, the framework contract is running. So we'd like to set up those systems that provide certainty to manufacturers. Thank you.
So mostly the payment guarantees and the volume guarantees, and also the timelines for those payments as a critical piece of that.
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you. And another question that is keen here is that when you look at our continent, you'll find that actually private sector plays a substantial role in delivering some of these products. So how does that fall into play? Because you'll realize some of the procurement at the moment from the coordination of African Union is looking at government procurement. But then you'll find in certain countries we have private sector supplying up to 40, 50% almost of healthcare services as well. So how do we work around that?
Yes. So the current focus of the mechanism is looking at public sector procurement, but we foresee opportunities in the future. Or if we set up a fairly efficient system and also a system that is transparent in pricing and information sharing, then we also see a situation where the private sector can be able to leverage it. So you have had initiatives in the continent like the African Medical Supplies Platform, AMSP, where where it's a platform, almost like an e-commerce platform, which also the private sector could use in terms of you have suppliers listed there with their products, and then the buyers could also buy. So I think there are also opportunities to leverage on the private sector. However, I think some of the things that we need to look at also is that the private sector, the success of private sector is on efficiencies, and where they are better off, where we are better off leveraging on the existing systems in terms of efficiency, then that should go on. Where there are gaps, then you can use, things like these pool procurement mechanisms at continental level and at regional level. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. There's a question in the chat from John Tafao. Is there any indication on when the expression of interest for vaccines will be communicated on the Africa CDC website?
So I think for the pool procurement mechanism that we are setting up, initially we are focusing on non-vaccines because the vaccine market and procurement system is quite structured and complex. So we'd like to be careful when we get into the vaccine procurement. So there are no timelines for now in terms of APPM doing procurement for vaccines. But we hope that once we have the systems running, we have a full understanding of the vaccine markets. We are especially interested in self-financing markets where countries are actually paying themselves to access these vaccines as opposed to getting from Gavi and UNICEF. So once we have a clear understanding of the antigens, the market size, and what value we can bring, then we'll be able to use the APPM. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much for that. I hope, John, for how that helps. And then Alan has a question here. Are all the target suppliers African-based, and how mature is the regional contraceptive manufacturing ecosystem?
Could you repeat the question again? Are all
the target suppliers African-based, which I think not really, but preference is to local manufacturing. But then the other question is how mature is the regional contraceptive manufacturing ecosystem in Africa?
Okay, so yes, you are right, as you have answered. So it's preference to local manufacturers. That's the whole idea. Of course, there are products which is not being manufactured in the continent at the moment, and there is pressing access issues. So then that will have to be sourced from elsewhere. And then the contraceptive market, I didn't get clearly the question, but the contraceptive market, especially for injectables, I think there's not much significant manufacturing in the continent. So that's an area where there is opportunity to leverage on that.
Thank you. So there's an opportunity in that context. I think that helps because the key question was just knowing whether there's already a developed ecosystem, and I don't think that exists at the moment, just as you've said. Those are the main questions that we had for you. I don't know if there's anybody else with a question on the same. Thank you. I think, Doc, there's no more questions for you. I'll just give you a chance to say give your final remark. Then I can go to the second part as you move to your next meeting.
So just to thank you again for giving me an opportunity to highlight some of the work that we are doing, and also to thank everybody who found time to attend to this session, and also that I'm reachable. I think I've shared my email. So yes, feel free to reach out. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ari, and have a good one.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
With that said, I'll bring back my screen. Let me know when you can see my screen. Is it visible?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. So based on the conversation that we've had, and I think by the virtue that this falls as part of our continuing guest lectures to the classes, we've noted that we all know about pool procurement and we're looking at it in terms of what's happening in the continent. But a key consideration, and it's only a single slide that we felt like it is important for us to reflect about, and reflecting on it in the context of when we talk about pool procurement, what are some of the key considerations that we need to have in mind? And we kind of bucketed it into three. And the essence of it, then it forms the next steps for market shaping intervention, or where is the action happening? What needs to happen differently? And beyond that happening the way it's happening, what would be the ultimate outcome of that action when it happens? And in this context, we look at the demand landscape. When you look at the African context, and even from the presentation that Dr. Rono has talked about, we realize that predominantly we've had a higher burden of infectious diseases in the continent. And we look at it in terms of antiretrovirals, antimalarials, and TB therapies, ATMs. And in that context, then, we have a substantial disease burden, which means there's a need for the medicines, the vaccines, the diagnostics, whatever it is, in terms of the health products and technologies. There is a need, and that is established from a clinical need perspective. But then when we move from the clinical need, the question that we looked at in terms of where does healthcare service delivery happen? And the context of this is important because most of the times when we look at pool procurement mechanisms, substantially they've been public sector facing, but in some of our markets, you'll realize that healthcare service delivery, substantial levels of it would be happening in private sector. I look at the Kenyan context where we are talking about 45 percentage difference, 55 public sector, 45 private sector, which means as much as the demand and the procurement is happening for public sector through the pool procurement mechanism, it means if these negotiated prices are not being transferred and actually being applied for private sector players, patient like David who goes to a private facility at one point will not benefit from those kind of price advantages and the economies of scale that we're looking at. So then how do we ensure that the whole country, because health is a public service and a public good, will be catered for in terms of looking at, do we get the same benefits in private and public sector then falling within the scope of government mandate? And how does that work? And that would be moving at it from a point of how do we get that demand consolidation from private sector and public sector so that if Africa Medical Supplies platform is the conveyancing platform where orders will be made from both public and private, then the negotiated price will cater for the volumes guarantee that you're talking about, that looks at the total volume needs in the country, not only public sector, but also both of public and private sector. And the other thing is who are we aggregating or pooling procurement for in the demand landscape. And that now then means that context of what I've talked about in terms of public sector and the private sector consideration that need to be there. We need to know what do we need, what quantities do we need, at what point do we need it, and who are the users of this product across that continuum. Is it being used in the public sector or in the private sector? And how do we ensure that that is reflected at the end of the day? But then when you leave the demand landscape, because once you've had a demand for something, unless somebody's producing it and making it available, the supply context will be a challenge. And the supply comes in terms of who are the current suppliers for the products that are needed in the market. Because when you look at the current context, you'll find that we import substantial volumes of products in the continent, which is a core. But then with those supplies, do we know the people who are the main suppliers? Can we look at what guarantees can we have with them? And if we have local suppliers, what are the considerations? What are the constraints that they're having? And when you look at it for the Africa CDC pool procurement mechanism is looking at it from driving local manufacturing capability in the continent. And if we are driving that local manufacturing capability, we need to know who are the people who are doing, even if it's just the fill and finish for vaccines or injectables, what constraints, what challenges do they have? How can they get the extra support in terms of shaping the ecosystem to enable them to perform at optimum capability? Maybe it's somebody helping them develop their quality management system. Maybe it's a kind of facilitating the purchase agreement so that then they can ramp up their production. Technology transfer, what are the key constraints? Then the current dynamics that are impacting supply of those products when they're needed. For some of the cases, it could be presumptive that there is a challenge in terms of pricing, but it is not a pricing issue. It could be a last mile procurement, that is reimbursement at the point of insurance. So then if it won't be reimbursed, then there's going to be a challenge. And that links us to the last pillar that we mentioned here is the payer landscape. Because if we're getting products that are negotiated for in prices, they will be available for use by patients and the general public. But when people are using them, unless there's a robust healthcare financing mechanism in place, that product doesn't get to the patient. Or however much it will have been negotiated for, somebody will not pay for it. And if it's not paid for, then the ecosystem will be coming down and crumbling because it is not sustainable. So what are the financing mechanisms available for the purchase of those products? Whether at the point of pool procurement, governments are setting aside budgets and all that. And who pays for the product, especially last mile? Is it out-of-pocket purchase for the patients? Which means it might be negotiated, yes. And I remember last month we had this conversation during the United Nations General Assembly. And one of the key things that came out is that there was a commitment in terms of the HIV vaccine that has been produced and it's being made available, the pre-exposure prophylaxis PrEP, at $40. How many patients who are at risk can get the product, pay $40 per injection? And if that is going to be a challenge, so then out of pocket is not possible. Do we go to access pathways? Do we go into national insurance schemes? And is it going to be reimbursable at that point in time or not? So those are some of the considerations that we need to look at. Then finally, who pays for the coordination of the procurement process? For some of the time, the negotiation can be good. And this was one of the challenges. We have a coordinating mechanism, but that coordinating mechanism needs to be sustainable in the long term. And you would say, for example, Africa Medical Supplies platform, it was established on COVID-19. After that, it hasn't been sustainable. Who is financing its operationalization, the business development, the market uptake in terms of coordinating suppliers and procurers across the different continents? So that coordination mechanism needs to be robust. And the payer landscape, we look at who is making the purchase for the commitment and whether we're getting private sector financing from banks, financial institutions, and all that. Last mile community access or social insurance schemes. And most importantly, payment for the coordination of the business development mechanism that needs to be there. Once we look at those key drivers of the landscape, we go now to the market shaping interventions and some of the key things that we prioritize and look at as key areas that one, there has to be regulatory support and technical capability development. mostly on government side regulatory agencies because they make the final decision whether the product can be made accessible or not. When you look at the existing pool procurement mechanism like Gavi, Global Fund, and all that, they've been mostly relying on the WHO pre-qualification pathway and the European Union medicines for all mechanisms, Swiss Medic in certain cases, but these have been linked to WHO pre-qualification or WHO mechanisms. Now we are getting into pool procurement within the continental framework. Are we going to ensure that there's an continental recognition of African Medicines Agency as a regulatory agency, or the respective countries will have the ML3 designated regulatory authorities making the decision, and then these are going to be transferable and acceptable by other agencies? And how do we help other agencies to get to the level where we can say there's conformance in standards of quality, safety, and efficacy across the continent? Then you look at regulatory support and technical support as well from the manufacturer standpoint. Local manufacturer would need to be able to build their capability, but unless they can comply with the stringent requirement with advanced regulatory standards, then they're not going to be able to meet those demands. So what kind of support do they need in one, developing the quality management system, the good manufacturing practices, but even engaging in these procurement mechanisms so that they can structure their financing arrangements as it's necessary at the subsequent phase? Then the second piece is looking at who are the financing agencies that can actually underwrite some of these commitments that we're making to ensure that pool procurement mechanisms are working. Because without those financing arrangements, whether it's in terms of the technology transfer that's happening at the initial phase, the local APIs that are needed to be able to produce the products across the value chain, there's going to be need for financing. Who will give the financing commitments, or what financial instruments can we use even without the, I would say, the prior commitment in terms of prior financing arrangement that is in place? Those are going to be key. Then we look at market coordination and management of information flow in the ecosystem. Oftentimes people are talking about products, and I think there's a question that came in terms of how is our contraceptive ecosystem, manufacturing ecosystem in the continent? Unless we know that information, unless we know the disease burden on the demand landscape, and I'll talk about the demand needs, we are not able to coordinate pool procurement mechanism. So who is going to coordinate the market to ensure that the disease burden information flow is happening at one point, but on the other end, the production is linked to that disease burden and that demand, and that is also influencing financing decision, procurement decisions, supply decisions, so that we are never going to a situation where there's a mishap or rather a disconnect between the supply and the demand needs in the market. The last piece is policy shaping to drive research and development, access, and pricing strategies for new products in line with the needs that are evolving over time. We've known a couple of disease outbreaks that we've had over time. And when these are happening, there are always going to be gaps, and therefore we need to have a robust ecosystem that is driving our life science research and development, but also market landscape from a point of one, safeguarding public health, ensuring reliability and access to safe, effective, and quality products. But on the other end, stimulating investment to drive economic growth and development, because then those become levers of control in terms of growing the life science industry across the continent. Economic growth and development, access to safe, effective, quality health products, and therefore safeguarding public health in its essence. These are some of the key considerations, and it's important that when we think of pool procurement, we need to ask ourselves, what is the demand landscape looking like? What is the supply landscape, and what are the key concerns that we need to address? On the payer landscape, who is financing it? At what point are they financing it? And who pays for the coordination of the whole process? Because then the coordination might become more expensive than the product in certain cases when the demand and supply are not aligned. Then what market shaping interventions do we need to actually guarantee that the ultimate output of what we are working on will be a success for the continent, and it will be a success for all of us working in that landscape for what we aspire for? Those are critical ones. With that said, I'll take a pause here and I'll hand it over to my colleague Juliet, who will take us through the feedback session. Unless somebody has a question or a comment. Oh, thank you. I see there are a couple of questions here. Caroline, do we have physical classes for the Pharmacy Academy? Currently, we have virtual classes, which are mostly once a week for the 3-month courses that we have. Then in the coming year, we're going to have some physical session, but not fully physical. Most of them are virtual. Okay, how will consistent delay in payment be handled? And I think that one was answered, Alfred. Consistent delay in payment is currently being handled from the negotiations on payment guarantees with manufacturers and all that. I'm hoping that would be a win for the continent. Tanaka Prince had a couple of questions. What is the rationale for pool procurement and regional standardization? The essence of pool procurement is to be able to get I would say, economies of scale in terms of what is the price point we're getting a product for. If we have substantial volumes, we can negotiate for lower prices, and therefore then access will be a guarantee. Because at the moment, we are looking at it in the sense that most governments in the continent are not able to finance their healthcare needs. And that is why we still rely on global coordinating mechanisms, as we have Global Fund, Gavi, UNICEF, and related. So then with pool procurement, we are hoping we're able to get those concessions and get lower rates for the products that we need. Regional standardization, it's important because then we can guarantee that the quality of the product meets the standards that are needed. Countries are not able to meet those requirements on their own account, and therefore the opportunity is, can we standardize at a continental level? Can we standardize within the regional economic communities? And then with common standards, we can say if Kenya approved it, then we can use it in Uganda, we can use it in Ethiopia. And it also guarantees that when we are making a purchase commitment, the supplier complies with that standard because we all agree that is what it should be, rather than getting a situation where the standards are different, because then that now brings conflicts in terms of what needs to be done and what doesn't need to be there. Is there any funding towards procurement of medicines at a regional stage to support the public also in case of emergencies? At the moment, I don't think there is any such mechanism, unless somebody in the chat knows and in the group call could let us know. Procurement medicines at the regional level, at the moment there isn't. For TB, malaria, HIV, we've had those ones through the Gavi, Global Fund and related programs, and even the PEPFAR under USAID. Africa CDC and private manufacturing companies in Africa, is there any discussion made to facilitate pool procurement? I would say they are having conversations at their own level. And last week there was the Africa Health Products Manufacturing Conference that happened in Ivory Coast. And these are some of the conversations, and I know Africa CDC participated in some of those conversations. The extent to which those engagements are going, I'm not able to speak to that, but I think there is progress that is being made. We just need to be able to follow through, but most importantly, ask these questions and get some of the key conversations to happen. So for Tanaka, the last two questions, I don't have much of the information. I'll also reach out to Dr. Wesley and see if there's any additional information that we can get. Then we'll share it as a follow-up question, a response to the question that you raised here. Great, thank you. Guys, we have our feedback form on menti.com, and the code has been on. Our code, go to menti.com, code is 7624 5434. 7624 5434. And when you're there, just give us your feedback so that we can know your take on this, but also to help us get to know what other topics should we bring up in the next series of conversation that we'll be having. Menti.com. The code is 7624 5434. Seven six two four 5434. That's the Menti code. Feel free to still join in. Hoping to be done in the next 5 minutes if you do well. Juliet, we can move to the next slide. What did you like about the session today? What did you like about the session today? Thank you. Thank you. Five more people. We have four more people who are logged in who have not yet responded. We're waiting for you in a minute or so. Then we move to the next one. Okay, Juliet, we can move to the next slide. What can we improve on in our next industry discussion forum? What can we improve on in our next session? Can be anything you wish we had shared. If you have nothing you think we can improve on from your experience, you can also let us know there's nothing to improve on at the moment. Make it more detailed, bring in multiple speakers on the topic of APPM. We could increase more interactive elements like polls or breakout rooms to make everyone more involved. Thank you. Thank you for that feedback. Request to share presentation slides. I confirm that you will have more of these coming your way. So the presentation slides will be shared after the call with all of you. How to share meeting invite or recording to those unable to attend. Those who are not able to, yes, the recording will be made available as well, just to confirm that. Good presentation, no improvement needed. Great, thank you. Thank you so much for that. We take note of those improvements, and definitely we will make those improvements in the next session. We'll bring more people. We'll introduce more interactive segments into the conversation so that most of us are involved, including breakout sessions. And definitely we get to learn and make better engagements as we move along. What other topic would you like for us to cover in our next discussion? What is that one topic you think needs to be talked about? It can be an area that you're working on. WHO qualification, thank you. That's good. Can be something that you're working on, something that you want to understand more about, something that you think is going to transform practice in one area or another that you think hasn't been talked about as much. Please do let us know. Any topic, it doesn't have to be industry focused. It can be clinical, it can be industry, it can be policy. Good manufacturing practice, okay. Let me asking, are there minimum demand set for PP, for pool procurement? No, there's no minimum demand, but it normally, every industry has a minimum order quantity. So every manufacturer will say for them to be able to supply a particular consignment, the manufacturing capacity is a particular volume. So then if we don't have a demand for such a volume, then they will not be able to manufacture. But if you get to beyond that quantity, then you now can negotiate for better prices and better rates. So that is company specific, capacity specific, but also dependent on the demand cycles and timelines that are needed for those supplies to be made. So we have WHO qualification, good manufacturing practice, clinical trial harmonization in Africa, AVRF presentation, WHO maturity levels and their impact. It may be a bit broad, but pharmacoeconomics and health technology assessment. Okay. Pharmacovigilance, availability of drugs being acquired. Some may be region specific. We have validation, cleaning and process in vaccine manufacturing setup. Antibacterial resistance plan development, WHO maturity levels. Great. Thank you for those topics. I know there are some that we did. We did a session on health economics and outcome research. We did another session on health technology assessment. So some of those are available on our YouTube channel. But we will also see there are definitely improvements. And when we're getting into those improvements, we'd be more than glad to host follow-up sessions for those. Technology transfer, thank you. Intersection of PPM with clinical practice and patient outcomes. Okay, that's a good one. Anything else? Okay. And you're free in case something comes to mind later on when you get to read something and you're like, okay, maybe we should have talked about this. Please do reach out and just send us an email. Our email is the one that you see at the bottom of the screen, secretariat@africanfarmernetwork.net. We'll be able to engage and see what we can do about the topics that you're proposing. With that said, I'll come to the end of this. Juliet, unless there's another question?
There is none.
Okay, thank you. So with that said, thank you so much, everyone, for engaging with us, for joining the conversation. We're going to give you 12 minutes of your time back. Have a good evening, have a good afternoon, wherever you are joining us from. And let's connect in our next industry discussion forum later in the coming month. Thank you and have a good one.